Hey YouTube, welcome back to Love for Crypto. So as you're all well aware, there's a lot of noise over on Twitter at the moment with the new launch of the Libra white paper from Facebook, which is Facebook's stablecoin asset, which they're dubbing as the new global reserve currency. Now, there's been a lot of mixed reactions on this topic in question, so I'm just going to put my feedback into it myself, what I think personally is happening, what will happen, likely outcomes. So first of all, let's talk about it. I mean, we've got Facebook now leaning into the cryptocurrency space. Obviously, they can clearly see the potential, as everybody else around the world can. You know, we've seen the IMF, we've seen central banks, the Bank of International Settlements, also the FSB stepping on cryptocurrencies. Keeping a very close eye on it, so to speak. For Facebook have come out now with this global coin approach. How it's going to work is they're going to back it a one-to-one peg against a reserve, that Libra. It's called the Libra Reserve. And the talks are to be putting central bank treasury notes in there, as well as short-term government securities. That will create this basket. If you want to call it, it could be like sort of like an ESDR basket as such. That will create a value, a pool of reserve, which then can issue out the Libra token against that collateral. Facebook are using it as an approach to help out the unbanked as well across the world, those that don't have access to financial tools, financial services as such. For me personally, the first take that I will put on this is if this does end up launching, and remember, when I do say does, it is a big question mark alongside that does, especially, I mean, it's only been released for 1 day and there's extraordinary amounts of scrutiny already being issued against the developments of this coin. But let's just say it does continue on its roadmap. It does end up issuing this Libra asset backed against this Libra reserve pool. You've got to remember that Facebook has a huge user base of around 2.5 billion people. And again, remember that this is a consumer application aimed at consumers themselves. You know, where Ripple and XRP are aiming at enterprise use and actually talking about rebuilding the financial system which the rails are built upon today. You know, also being dubbed as Swift 2.0. What Facebook are trying to do is try and release an application on a consumer level, which for me personally is absolutely fantastic news for this space. We're talking about 2.5 billion people. Potentially a large percentage of those will probably not even know what cryptocurrencies are. By Facebook releasing this stable asset, this cryptocurrency, will automatically inject curiosity into the user base of Facebook to then outreach and look into cryptocurrencies as a general. So what this does for awareness for cryptocurrencies is next to none, and I highly support the idea. I don't think it's a bad idea whatsoever. You know, if you've watched the documentaries, when we do speak about the ILP roadmap itself, we clearly have Facebook in there anyway. Obviously, in this white paper, there is no talks of how they are going to create that interconnectivity between RTGS systems and other payment platforms. But also remembering that the W3C group, which is currently working on the Interledger protocol, Facebook are a part of that group. So it would make sense for them to adopt the ILP as that interoperability protocol moving forward into the future. I mean, that's a very, very massive advantage. You know, if we do see Facebook tapping into ILP for that cross payment settlement from different applications, your Googles, your Amazons, your Facebooks, the RTGS systems, the Federal Reserves, the Central Bank of England, other central banks. We've seen the roadmap from the Everest NT&T data roadmap with that consortium of all the mega banks in the world that appear to be leaning in on the Interledger protocol, especially the Bank of England. Let's not forget they carried out the proof of concept in 2017 and have moved forward for further testing. I think it's fair to say, whether it's Ripple, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Google, PayPal, Airbnb or Uber, they will all need that standardized protocol for the interoperability of exchanging value from these individual walled gardens, if you want to call it such. So, you know, you've got the Libra Facebook coin, which is going to be used within the Facebook ecosystem, and I'm all for it. Now, that's my advantages for this coin. Disadvantages. Now, as we said, they are using central bank treasury notes to help back this reserve, to help give it that stability. So, you know, rather than backing it with just United States dollars, Federal Reserve issued notes, they will be using a variety of different treasuries to help give it that stability. So if there is a downfall in the dollar, then the rest of these currencies will help keep the reserve basket from taking substantial hits, falls, risks. It is a way of deleveraging risk rather than just basing it upon one currency. They've created the basket. Now, we've been seeing serious scrutiny now coming from G7 countries. We've had the French central bank, head of the central bank, calling for an absolute stop of the Libra coin. We've had the same response from the German central banks, from the finance ministers. We're also hearing members of Congress now looking to block all developments of the Libra asset that is being created from Facebook. It's been seriously being undermined, and I think the reason for it is Facebook are acquiring or plans to acquire all these treasury notes, and the interest that they earn from it will be then used to help develop their technological, if you want to call it, revolution for payments. It seriously is undermining central banks' role in the world, this now. We've got Facebook, who are already under scrutiny for negligence with consumer data. You know, it being sold, it being lost, it being exposed, all these types of things. And now obviously the concern is if they are going to go into the payment space, there is no credibility behind the platform to ensure the safeguard of this data that will be produced from this financial footprint, if you want to call it as such, from moving this coin and the settlements in and out of the system. But again, remember, the on and off ramps, it's going to bring a lot of not just awareness, but it'll be a great on and off ramp into crypto space itself. I mean, if I personally was Facebook, I'd 100% be thinking about making some sort of built-in exchange on the platform where you could get Libra coin against BTC pairings, Libra coin against Ethereum, Libra against XRP. Again, that will create profound awareness in this space for these assets. You know, just remember, people, if you are watching this video, you are a small percentage of the world population that truly understands this technological revolution that is happening in the payment space, and it's specifically for liquidity provisioning. You know, the whole methodology and the way that things will be done, it are dramatically going to change moving forwards into the future. Again, Facebook are under heavy scrutiny here now. There's talks of Congress potentially blocking full developments of this Libra asset. Again, it is undermining the role of central banks itself. You know, if Facebook are going to be acquiring these treasury notes, pooling it into their own reserve, issuing that against their own stable coin, where interest paid on these assets is then going to be returned to Facebook, we're already talking about an international power potentially trying to wipe out banks' role in the future. I mean, if you think about your commercial banks, especially here over in the UK at the moment, in my town centre there used to be seven commercial banks in there where you could use for banking facilities. Now there's none. There's literally none. You have to go into the main city centres now to actually walk into a bank. We all know that bank services are changing. It's undeniable, it's unquestionable. I mean, for people over here in the UK, the Royal Bank of Scotland have been carrying out proof of concepts with Ripple technology, whether you did know that or not. And I suppose that probably speaks for a lot of other commercial banks. You know, this is a banking revolution as such. Now we've got Facebook leaning in, trying to offer banking services as such. And for the likeliness for me to completely try and eliminate banking on a commercial level with the Facebook application, we are talking about 7.5 billion users potentially being customers of Facebook, and we're talking serious monopoly of this sort of payment space, if you want to call it that. Also, you've got all the negligence. You've got G7 countries that are going to be taking this now into this G20 summit, which is obviously based around as a highly important topic around cryptocurrency regulations, the KYC and the AMLs. Obviously, as I said, we've had the French, I believe it's the central bank head, or it could be potentially the French finance minister. Also, again, with Germany, bear in mind, Germany is the largest European sort of market contributor. And they're all coming out with negativity. It cannot happen. It must not happen. We've got calls from congressmen now who are also coming out saying that needs to be stopped. It cannot be allowed to develop. And it's serious. I mean, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you follow XRP and you know and understand its true capabilities of its liquidity solution that it can offer to the world. On this channel we spoke about price suppression of XRP. We've spoken about the FUD around Ripple and XRP. They finally got XRP under control, exactly where they want it. Again, it is a manipulated market. We're talking about geopolitical, economic, critical conditions around the globe at the moment. We are on that brink. We already are confirmed in a slowdown. We've got talks of monetary policies being issued around quantitative easing now, which please remember people, these are policies that are used in emergency situations, and we've got talks of QE coming. Again, the Federal Reserve will be speaking about potential Fed interest rate cuts today. Whether it does or does not happen this month, there's an 84% chance of it on the futures happening next month, and a 98% chance of it happening in September. So again, we've got seriously financial stability concerns around the globe, regardless of XRP or Facebook. These concerns are real, and they need to mitigate these risks. And again, I remember an interview with Brad Garlinghouse, and he come out saying that there are speed limits that we need to adhere to. And I believe this would have been talks and potentially from the IMF and central banks. Again, they are in dialogue with all these heads. I remember the Swiss National Bank high-level monetary sort of consortium of all those global leaders, the central banks, the finance ministers, where Ripple was at the top seat. It was Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, who was at that top seat. Ripple was the only private sector allowed in that meeting, and it was Brad Garlinghouse, not Mark Zuckerberg, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, Ripple are working for and within the system for central banks, for commercial banks, to create this new network, and the network effects will transpire to create this new on-demand liquidity solution to eliminate the pre-funding of having to hold over 110 different currencies that are all up for risk mitigation. Obviously, we've got currency devaluations, and it's going to transform the banking landscape in that regard. Now, when we speak about Facebook, they're coming out basically speaking about being your own bank, basically talking about creating a global coin. Listen, this is something the central banks do not want to hear. This is something finance ministers do not want to hear. We're talking about a company that's already got full monopoly over, not full monopoly, but they've got a vast majority of that monopoly when it comes to the data. Remember, Facebook revenues are driven 95% from marketing, which is obviously based around the data of what Facebook can acquire from their users. For me personally, Facebook is going to be a non-starter. The Libra coin will be a non-starter. It's only been out for a day, the white paper, and there is serious scrutiny around this asset that is going to be released, and especially with them, trying to use foreign reserve treasuries to collateralize this reserve basket. It's going to take a lot of the demand out of the actual traditional system, and it could potentially create liquidity shortfalls. Again, it's a systemic risk factors around the economic conditions that we're actually seeing today. Again, when we talk about QE, we're talking about the slowdown. We're seeing job numbers being decimated now in the USA. We've got Trump calling for a weaker dollar. We've got other countries around the world devaluing their currencies. We are going from a trade war to a full-blown currency war by the looks of things. And the last thing that we need now is Facebook thinking they can walk into the world and create this global one world currency and think that they're just going to be able to go out there and do it unwillingly. Listen, these central banks have already made specific statements. We're talking 2 G7 countries already coming out within 24 hours saying this must not happen and cannot happen. Remember, it's about working with the system. Now, when we speak about Ripple, we speak about their collaborative efforts with central banks. For example, the Federal Reserve, for example, the Bank of England. Ripple are helping create this interoperability between payment systems. So a great way of looking at this is you've got the RTGS system of the Bank of England, its own internal domestic settlement system. You've then got other operating payment systems around the world. You could call it Amazon, you could call it Google Pay, Apple Pay. So you've got all these new payment networks. Again, we have to use the corresponding banking network in order to bridge value, to exchange value from one payment system and to another. So if you've got settlement that needs to occur on Amazon, it will have to transpire through that corresponding banking network in order to go back to its native RTGS domestic system. So in Amazon, we're talking about the Federal Reserve. Amazon needs to get all this collection of the currencies it's obtained worldwide, because again, it is a worldwide company, so they will be in possession of all sorts of currencies, and Amazon will then want to accumulate that currency into their own native United States dollar. So we've got to talk about the corresponding banking network, the way that we exchange value. As you're all well aware, if you have been watching this channel for the past getting on to 2 years now. So what Ripple are doing with these banks, they're gifting them an open source protocol. There's no incentive behind it working for Ripple. They will gain from it, but in a fair and open, even level playing field way. So you've got this new technology, the Interledger protocol, which central banks are leaning in on. We've shown the proof of concept from 2017 with Ripple, with the Interledger protocol for synchronization between two RTGS systems. So Ripple are actually helping aid the banking world, rather than talking about all this pre-funding capital throughout various different currencies across the world, which are up for serious risk mitigations, with the currency devaluation. We talk about the Argentino peso stripping 50% of its value, the Turkish lira stripping 80% of its value, and in order for great liquidity within markets, these types of currency devaluations are good for nobody, especially for the people up front in their capital in these countries, just to allow commerce to be readily available. So we're talking about a full revamp of actually pre-funding now, because if we can adopt the Interledger protocol, we can have on-demand settlement by using XRP as that liquidity solution. So please do remember, we're talking about an open source technology adopted by the W3C group, which is being adopted now by central banks and all sorts of other conglomerates around the world, which is going to enable this interoperability with one another. And again, XRP being a completely decentralized protocol, we've got obviously the lock up, the escrow. You can argue whether that will be held in Ripple's possession for the ongoing, or whether somebody will step in with a more authority, for example the IMF, to oversee the actual release of this escrow, if it is to become adopted on that grand scale that we do, and we all surely hope happens. Now what Facebook are trying to do themselves is they're trying to create their own internal walled garden themselves, from what we're seeing with this Libra coin, where the asset can be used within its own ecosystem. Again, it will need some sort of bridge, some interoperability protocol to exchange value in and out of the system. But again, we're talking about Facebook in a walled garden trying to create a new global world reserve currency, not reserve currency, a new global currency, so to speak. And all I want to say on this, if you follow us on Twitter, go and check out my feed. We're getting all sorts of congressmen, finance ministers, head of central banks coming out saying we must put a stop to this now. And listen, these people will get their way. They always have done. The bankers rule the world, and they will not allow Facebook to come out and create their own sovereign currency for the world to use. It's again, for me personally, I hope Facebook can come out with this currency. I hope they have some sort of internal crypto exchange where they're charging 0.25% on each trade that's created, just like we see in our normal exchanges. That'll create great awareness for it. And again, people who do, if they do use Libra coin for whatever services, it's going to create that overall awareness for cryptocurrency and legitimise the space even further. So my take on Facebook so far is, because of the responses from the G720 members of those establishments, listen, it looks like a non-starter. It looks like that white paper will need some serious adjustments if it's to get any sort of approval. It looks like this is now going to be passed through Congress as well. And unlike Bitcoin and unlike XRP, believe me, these institutions can put a stop to developments like this. Unlike XRP, which is a fully decentralized protocol, no entity, no government, no nation no intelligence service can end the network. It is completely decentralized protocol, and it is biased to nobody, and nobody can shut the network down. That's the difference. Facebook is a centralized institution operating from within inside the United States, and if Congress do block the Libra coin, then it will not happen. So there's my take on it. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, don't have no concerns about this Libra coin. If anything, it will be good for the awareness for the digital asset space. And again, you know, if it does have some sort of internal walled garden function, and then again, obviously, when we do come to talk about bridging that value in and out of the ecosystem itself, we will need an interoperability protocol, a standardized protocol, which we heavily are in favour now of weighing in on that, the ILP acting as this protocol moving forward in the digital revolution. The second part of this video, we want to talk about the MoneyGram acquisition. Ripple, I believe, have invested 30 million with a potential of that becoming 50 million for around 7% total share of MoneyGram. So Ripple are now investors. They are now board members of MoneyGram itself, and they will now have a large input on the direction. We've heard that MoneyGram, and we've heard Brad Garnow, he signed into a 2-year deal where they will be aggressively using the XRP and XRP asset now for liquidity. Again, if you're not on Twitter, follow us on Twitter. I put a MoneyGram CEO radio clip about the partnership with Ripple. It's on my Twitter feed. If you have a look through it, you will see it. I highly recommend that you check that out. So we've got the CEO of MoneyGram now openly talking about the efficiency of MoneyGram, saying it is an efficient system as it were, and it's probably next to none in regards of its capabilities and technological sort of developments where it has occurred to its position in the future where we are today. But they do specifically talk about the pre-funding of capital. Now, MoneyGram are operating in over 200 countries with over 240,000 individual locations. Now, I think the CEO mentioned that they have to pre-fund 110 alternative currencies in order to offer that service to its customers. So we're talking about MoneyGram now pre-positioning, I think it was 800 billion of pre-funded capital around the world. Again, like I said, we are coming into a very delicate economic time now where the valuation of currencies, especially emerging markets, will be severely, devalued. We've already seen it. We've seen the emerging market contagion. And again, as the dollar becomes weaker, we will only see the knock-on effect with these emerging markets. So we've got high risk to capital parked overseas. MoneyGram, being a United States-based institution, would rather have all their capital for their liquidity provisioning in their own domestic currency in the United States. And then what we're going to see is we're going to see these channels into all these various different locations around the world that will be utilising XRP for that on-demand, real-time solution of liquidity. Again, it mitigates all the risk of the capital exposure in these emerging markets. And not only that, MoneyGram, with the financial struggles that they're having, they just had a massive boost from Ripple. As you've seen, the stock price out of hours traded went up 198% on the news that Ripple was now becoming shareholders in the MoneyGram institution itself. So again, we're talking about now MoneyGram being able to bring all this capital, this negative capital that's not being able to work for them, back home, and now they can adopt XRP and XRapid as a liquidity solution to move money in and out of these currencies without holding that exposure risk to their capital. Ladies and gentlemen, whether it's sunk in for you or whether it hasn't, this is fucking massive news. We're now talking about a 2-year signed deal specifically stating XRP will be used when and where possible. Now again, we know we've got the Mexican reals, we've got the Philippine reals. He's talked about obviously Brazilian reals and Argentinian reals. And listen, what I've always said on this channel is when we do see this economic downturn, we're already seeing the slowdown. We've been talks of getting QE. Once we start seeing those rate reductions, it's a one-way trip to hell. Listen, emerging markets are going to be struggling in ways uncomprehendable at this point. And Ripple are targeting these emerging markets. They're offering these emerging markets access to liquidity where it would usually, in previous past crises. Liquidity has been starved and next to non-existent for commerce to be able to come in and out. It's import and export out of these emerging markets. So it's great to see that we've actually got a liquidity provisioning tool now that can actually help aid these emerging markets when we do start to see the downfall and what other people are calling the Great Depression round 2. It won't just be a recession this time, it will be depression. And I do believe the IMF will end up coming out after this crisis as a more significant role in the world than what we see today. I do believe the SDR basket will be adopted a lot more in regards of bailing out these countries that will have failed economies, and the IMF can obviously leverage their tools and their assets to help kickstart the system back off and to help maybe standardise a supranational currency based around the SDR and removing that reserve status from from the United States. Again, it's only hindering the United States. We're talking about one-way trade deficits, which isn't good for America, and it will never make America great again if they continue to act as that world reserve currency. We've already got talks of de-dollarization, and we have now seen significant acts, especially with China and Russia. Again, China and Russia both dumping US Treasury notes and going out buying and accessing gold is signs of stirs that we are potentially going to be coming to the end of this United States reserve status, and now we can see central banks around the world hedging out of the Treasury notes and obtaining these metals. Now again, when we do speak about the IMF, when we speak about the World Bank, and we speak about the Swiss National Bank Conference and the high-level monetary system conference that we did, luckily enough to have parts and snippets of, remember a lot of this was behind closed scenes. There was only 2 segments live streamed from it. But again, this was all talks about demand on the US dollar. You know, we talk about the United States probably contributing towards 15% GDP of world GDP, yet 65% of its domestic currency, the United States dollars, is subjected to trade. So again, you know, there's an imbalance there. I think the world, as I've noticed, since 2008 was the real telltale signs of it. And since then we have had calls from China as supranational currency. Now China might step in as a part-time economic engine if the United States really does start to free fall. But ultimately China will not want their currency to act as a domestic, as a world, reserve currency, because again it will then be China who will have to deal with these deficits. This system, the way it's built at the moment, is about to be radically changed, and talks of the supranational currency, which could be issued by the IMF as the SDR basket, and we know the ties and talks in with the IMF and with Ripple, and they love the technology, the distributed ledger technology, and they see XRP and Ripple and the liquidity solution and how they can interoperate around each other without having to rely on the corresponding banking network. I think is a big eye-opener for the IMF, which really truly allows their SDR basket to flourish in a world of uncertainty. Now, leading back to the MoneyGram partnership with Ripple, I've been doing a bit of research into it. One thing I will say is, I think again on the Twitter feed, I've retweeted it. The largest bank in the world, the Chinese bank, heavily partnered with MoneyGram. We're talking over 200 countries now where we could potentially be seeing XRP adoption as a liquidity solution. MoneyGram clearly see the benefits of actually utilising XRP rather than pre-funding over 110 different currencies, again, which is the risk mitigation, and also they can then put that working capital at use for the benefit of themselves rather than having it exposed just for the availability for customers. They now can just use their own native capital, the United States dollar, and then obviously they can just use that as and when with XRP to provide that on-demand liquidity. Again, it's going to take a long time, ladies and gentlemen, but this is a significant step. You know, this isn't just a trial. This is the second largest money transfer company in the world, who are linked in with Walmart, 200 different countries, 260,000 different operations around the world. They're linked in with the SBI group, with the largest bank in China. Listen, the list is endless. It is a major bit of news that has just come out, and people are more concerned about Facebook Libra coin. Listen, if you look back, if you look at the Interledger protocol, if you look back at the Everest NTNT photograph, which is the black background, which is showing the network of how and when, where it was and where we're going with the roadmap, Listen, it shows Facebook on there, it shows Amazon on there, it shows Google on there, it'll show Alibaba on there, it'll show WeChat on there, it will show, you know, Ethereum, Bitcoin, central banks, you name it. All that is happening with these new issuance of payment platform is creating more friction in a world where settlement times, costs of transferring this value are already extremely high. To add more friction to that system is just only going to prove that we do need that liquidity solution, you know, the modern era liquidity solution. You know, the actual reserve status itself will change over time. You know, rather than holding a world reserve currency where all global trade is denominated in for oil, the United States dollar and gold, I do believe that peg will be taken away and some form of supranational currency. Now, whether the SDR, the basket, will play a role in being that peg back value, whether the world adopts the Interledger protocol as that standardized interoperability protocol for the exchange and exchange of value from all payment systems, you know, whether XRP then being used as the most, you know, scalable, fastest transaction, decentralized asset, it's been proven with the test with ILP that where XRP is readily available, it's always the fastest and cheapest option. Whether XRP may potentially become a global unit of account. Listen, it's extremely exciting times in this world, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, again, I put a very good tweet out the other day, yesterday it was, and again I said, remember, ladies and gentlemen, at the Swiss National Bank high-level monetary system conference, remember it was Brad Garland who sat at that high-level seat, not Mark Zuckerberg. For me personally, I genuinely think the Facebook issuance of this Libra coin is good for the space in general. They're leaning in, it legitimizes the space, and again, Facebook, in my opinion, would be idiotic to not open an internal exchange where they're charging 0.25% on each trade that occurs, just like Binance, just like all these other exchanges worldwide. You know, we're talking about a substantial amount of people, 2.5 billion, with the awareness. They will go and curiosity will take over, just like it did with all you people that are viewing this video, and you will end up be finding your way to Bitcoin, finding your way to XRP. And if 2.5 billion's worth of exposure isn't enough for people out there, then I don't know what is. For me personally, this is posing no threat to Ripple whatsoever. Facebook is a consumer-based application. You know, we're talking about Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. We're talking about a walled garden of services. Listen, this is no different than WeChat, than Alipay over in China. Listen, they're already using systems like this in position now. It's just that the laggards in the United States have not got an adoption of a mobile payment platform within their the domestic rails. You know, China are already doing this. Okay, it might not be a stable asset, but you know, we've got WeChat, we've got Alibaba, Alipay, and they're significant fintechs in the Chinese economy itself. You know, they are enabling money. You know, we're talking bills, utilities, shops, barcode. It's all QR codes now. You scan it, and this is the world where we're moving. So if Facebook can come out there and increase even more exposure, that's fine. Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, with every distributed ledger payment system that is introduced to the world, it increases even more friction to the corresponding banking network, and eventually the realization for an on-demand, secure, real-time liquidity solution will become more apparent. And remember, we still need to have that standardized protocol to be able to communicate with each payment platform, whether it's Facebook, Amazon, Google, whether it's, you know, central banks, whether it's commercial banks. We all need a way to communicate with each other on a standardized way. Listen, the corresponding banking network designed in 1970s, pre-existing the internet, will simply not cut it in this generation and in this revolution. So as you can see, the W3C group have adopted the Interledger protocol. Do me a favor, ladies and gentlemen, go and search W3C group members. You will find your Facebook, your Amazon, your Google, your Alipay, your Alibaba, the United States government, the British government, central banks around the world, major conglomerates, major institutions and corporations. They all form the working, the World Wide Web Consortium, which is the W3C group, and it looks and it appears to be that the Interledger protocol has been adopted as the standardized protocol for communication and for the interoperability with each payment system. So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there thinking, oh, this is the XRP killer, the Ripple killer, listen, nobody cares about what Ripple are doing. Ripple are a business. Ripple are operating with the banks, creating enterprise software for banks to use. XRP is not attached to Ripple. Okay, they may hold the escrow, but it's a true decentralized protocol. And I believe if we do go into this type of digital economy, again with that 55 billion lockup, I do think people will end up weighing in on the actual say. You know, whether this escrow will be gifted to as such to the W3C group, meaning that there is no bias for Ripple moving forwards to gain monopoly of that market. I see highly possible. I do believe the escrow is too powerful for Ripple moving forwards into the future if they are going to execute on their plan. And I do believe the escrow will be used to help incentivize the usage of the ILP for the interconnectivity. Again, we've been doing some great work with SBQ&R, with Brad Kynes, with Mickey Fresh, oh God, I forgot the other member who is absolutely substantial contributor to it. But again, obviously, we can have these stable coin assets collateralized against digital assets, again, uncorrelated to traditional markets. But ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to keep it long-winded. Listen, the MoneyGram collaboration partnership announced a 2-year deal to use XRP when and where possible is a major catalyst for XRP and the XRapid ecosystem itself. We're talking about exposure to corridors now on an unforeseen level. You know, we maybe will be able to tap into Argentina, into Peru, into Colombia, into Venezuela. You know, the MoneyGram are operating everywhere in the world. You go to every single Walmart store, it is MoneyGram powered. And we talk about SBI Remit, again with the links with MoneyGram. I've just told you about the largest bank in the world, a Chinese bank, again with the links to MoneyGram. Ripple have just put themselves in an extraordinary, historical, revolutionising point in history. A lot of people can't see it, a lot of people are distracted by the Facebook, the noise that's over on Twitter. Listen, for me, Facebook is a non-starter. With the white paper issued, it's under severe scrutiny, and I don't even think it will be allowed to develop unless radical changes have been made. Again, you know, we're talking about systemic risk financially. You know, Facebook can't just come into the world, issue a global coin and just think that there's going to have no backlash and no opposition against it. We're talking against finance ministers, central banks. We're talking about monetary authorities around the world that will just simply say, no, you cannot issue your own sovereign currency to act as that world currency. Now, I'm all for stablecoin releasing a stable asset within the ecosystem, but I think the way that they're going around it to try and create this monopoly around it, I just don't think it's going to cut it. And it's been proven by congressmen that are coming out, by finance ministers from the G7 coming out. I think it will be highly spoken about in this G20 upcoming in Japan, which ends on the 28th. We've got the FATF regulations and guidelines that will be coming out on the 21st of this month, ladies and gentlemen. That is a massive, massive thing. Again, we've got the G20 summit, which will be closing to an end on the 28th of June. Basically, you know, we know they're heavily talking about crypto regulations around AML, KYC, know your customer, and putting a standardised sort of adoption of regulations, which then countries can go and fine tweak to themselves. But if we can have that standardised G20 level sort of guidelines, regulatory clarity, that'll be absolutely massive for this space. And this, at the very end of the video, is a slight little bit of tinfoil hat. But Donald Trump did come out saying he's got a big announcement to make on the 28th of June, which is on the closing day of this G20 summit, which is after the FATF guidelines have been issued for the main governing body across the world, regulatory wise. You know, we've got talks of the Federal Reserve's Faster Payments Task Force, which was announced in executive order, and that task force was the sort of creation of that executive order coming out. Talks of a fairer financial inclusive system. Listen, it's speculation at this point. Will Donald Trump come out and drop a fucking bombshell on the entire crypto sphere, or is it just something completely uncorrelated whatsoever? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't usually make videos. Scott does our daily videos, our daily takes and the roundups of the news. I felt obliged that I had to step in and weigh myself in with the Facebook, with my own personal opinions on the Facebook surrounding the Libra coin, with the MoneyGram acquisition. Listen, that is the biggest news that's ever happened in Ripple history as far as I'm concerned. I know we've got the interworkings with central banks, but having a component like MoneyGram With they've got a 7 to 10% share in as shareholders, Ripple themselves. They've now got leverage on the direction of the company. We know they've just signed a 2-year deal to fully utilise XRP moving forwards as a liquidity solution. If you've not heard the CEO of MoneyGram talk radio, please go and check out our Twitter. It is on there. Give that a share, give it a retweet. It's absolutely substantial, and it's great to hear it from MoneyGram CEO himself talking about the liquidity provisionings, about bringing back home that capital and then utilising XRP to ensure the on-demand